Decker Theater. I'm Sharon Niels. I'm on the board of the Dairy, and I'm also on the programming committee here at the Bow. And welcome to Science on Screen. The Alfred P. Sloan Foundation has encouraged filmmakers to incorporate science in their narrative films, and so they give an award every year for a narrative film that has science in it. And they also have encouraged theaters like the Bow to have science on screen. So Coolidge Corners and Alfred P. Sloan Foundation give grants, and we are the recipient of one of those grants. Tonight, our science on screen is the science of bullying, and we're going to show the film Mean Creek. Our guest lecturer is S.J. Miller. How many of you know S.J.? All right. Well, I won't give you too detailed bio, but just for those of you who don't know S.J., Associate Professor of Literacy at the University of Colorado, prepares pre-service students to teach middle and high school English, and has published widely in journals. In 2005 was the Article of the Year award winner for Shattering Images of Violence in Young Adult Literature, Strategies for the Classroom, and also co-authored Unpacking the Loaded Teacher Matrix, Negotiating Space and Time Between and the New Social Justice Across Contexts in Education. So without further ado, I will turn it over to S.J., who will talk for 20 minutes, just kind of priming the pump for the film, and then we will also talk after the film. Thanks for coming.
Can everybody hear me? Mic's on? All right, great. So thank you for coming out tonight. By no means is this a happy topic. Many of us have been impacted by bullying or have been bullies ourselves. So this is a very, very serious issue, and hopefully tonight I'll shed some light on the neuroscience of bullying. I'd like to take a pulse of the audience first before we go into the work. How many of you are community members or activists? Okay. How many of you are parents of a child who was a bully or who was bullied? Okay. How many of you are teachers in the public or private schools in the area? Okay. How many of you are principals? How many of you are students at University of Colorado Boulder? A lot of you. How many of you are faculty or staff at CU Boulder? Okay. How many of you are social workers? Healthcare practitioners? Okay. And how many of you are here because you care about bullying and stopping bullying? All right. So, as talked about, what we're going to do is I'm going to take you into some facts around bullying. Then we're going to watch a feature-length film. It's an award-winning independent film. It came out in 2005. And then we're going to do some small work to talk about bullying. I've got some questions in front of you. You will not be tested over it. It's more for your own interest. So the yellow sheet will come back to you. I'm also going to be raffling off 3 copies of the movie. So if you're interested in getting a copy, you have a little piece of paper right next to you. Please fill it out. And Erin, if you raise your hand, Erin is one of my students. She's going to be collecting them. So if you please pass that over to Erin, I would really appreciate it. All right. So the title of my talk is Unpacking the Mind of a Bully, the Neuroscience of Bullying. This first part, we're going to start off with an interactive activity. So hopefully you know the difference between your left and your right hand. So if the answer is going to be true for yourselves, then what I'd like for you to do is raise your right hand, and you'll know to remember true has an R in it, and so does right. Okay? Left will be over here on the left side, and the answer will be false. So there's an F in false and an F in left. Okay? So again, left will be left hand for false, and right will be right hand for true. If you don't know the answer, you'll make a U for unsure in the middle. Okay? You want to practice real quick? Okay. So, if the answer is true, right hand, false, left, you're unsure, big U, and feel free to, make any questions. Alright, so here we go. The word bully was first used in 1530 and originally applied to both genders and meant sweetheart. It's from the Dutch bol, meaning lover or brother. Around the 17th century, the term began to mean fine fellow, blusterer, and then harasser of the week. True or false? Okay, yes, this is true. Bullying has become accepted and normalized in the values, behaviors, and rhetoric of our country. This is true. The United States has federal anti-bullying policy. This is false. Bullying is not an international issue. Okay, good, that is false. The Megan-Myers Cyberbullying Prevention Act is federal law. This is false. The media is rampant with images of bullying. Okay, this is true. Every 7 minutes, a child is bullied. True. The average bullying episode lasts only 37 seconds. Teachers notice or intervene in only 1 in 25 incidents. This is true. Every day, 160,000 students skip school because they are afraid they will be bullied. This is true. Researchers note that bullying escalates in the later years of elementary school, peaks in middle school, and then dissipates by high school. They also note that 6th grade is the worst year for bullying. This is true. Bullying stops in college. False. Hazing is not bullying. Good, that is false. Girls engage more often than boys in relational bullying, such as backstabbing, blackmail, scapegoating, looks, and stare-downs. This is true. Boys engage in more physical bullying than girls, such as hitting, kicking, punching, and sexual misconduct. This is true. 85% of the time peers are present, no one intervenes in bullying. This is true. The bullied are at risk for lowered grade point average, dropping out, substance abuse, loss of self-esteem and worth, loss of friendships, emotional withdrawal, cutting, eating disorders, mental health risks, and suicidal ideation, and lastly, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which I'll talk about later. This is true. I've intervened when I see someone being bullied. True. 40% of teens are victims of cyber digital bullying, but fewer than 10% report that to their parents. True. If bullying is reported to a teacher, counselor, or any other school personnel, and the school fails to act, the individual and even the district can be sued. True. People can take their own lives because they are bullied. This is called bullycide. True. Bullying is not an adult issue. False. People are never bullied in my school, department, or college. I have or have had teachers or professors who bully students. I can make a difference against bullying if I speak out. Ignoring bullying reinforces and condemns it. I bullied others at some point in my life. I was bullied growing up. Okay, in Colorado, I want to make you aware of the law that's on the books. According to House Bill 11-1254, bullying means any written or verbal expression or physical or electronic act or gesture or pattern thereof that is intended to coerce, intimidate, or cause any physical, mental, or emotional harm to any student. Bullying is prohibited against any student for any reason, including but not limited to any such behavior that is directed toward a student on the basis of his or her academic performance, or against whom federal and state laws prohibit discrimination upon any of the bases described in section 22, etc. Our anti-bullying policy enumerates students' identities to include disability, race, creed, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, religion, ancestry, or need for special education services, and all categories protected by state and federal anti-discrimination laws. True or false? I know my child's school district's or university's anti-bullying policy. I see people in my child's school effectively intervene in cases of bullying. I know about the anonymous reporting site for bullying of students, all students in Colorado, at safetotell.org. If you don't know about it, look it up. It's completely anonymous. I'd like to be more involved in anti-bullying reform so I can recognize if gaps are present in school, district, university, and our state policy. And that is for you. All right. So what I want to do is get into the mindset of the bully and talk more about the neuroscience of bullying. So bullying is mediated and activated by competing social, emotional, and psychological factors. Bullying cannot, though, be reduced to science alone. It is sustained by a network of deeply complicated and often competing realities. Research actually shows that bullies have a strong sense of self-worth and esteem. Bullies tend to have a very large network of friends. Bullies are not necessarily antisocial. They're often popular students. And research shows that bullies have not necessarily been bullied in their own life. Bullies are attuned to social hierarchies, and they're also attuned to individuals' vulnerabilities. So why do bullies bully? What I'm about to show you is my theory on why bullies bully. And the network of these different domains and rationales are interdependent. They feed off of each other, constellating what I call structured violence. So the first is the bully. The second is the medical model that surrounds the bully. We have the ideology of the norm, and we have what's called a privileging environment. So the medical model. The medical model has a biological orientation that focuses on the binary identifiers of sickness and mental health, which are considered as abnormal, unhealthy, or which require intervention or something that is need of fixing, according to the DSM. And I cite the medical model as a causality of bullying because the model has such strong widespread structural power, and it's reinforced throughout dominant culture, generating and sanctioning normal and abnormal dichotomies. Now, when you take the medical model and you put it up against the norm, bullies have come to identify with the norm, which is a set of social narratives, myths, ideas, values, and types of varying reliability, usefulness, and verifiability. So bullies become agitated and threatened when the ideology of the norm is challenged by any externalized non-normative representation in society and schools writ large. When the narratives are threatened, bullies go on the attack because they are attuned to these deviations and often feel vindicated because some of these non-normative representations are pathologized by and in the medical model or in society writ large. Now, when you put this up against the environment, bullying becomes acceptable and predictable when environments or systems privilege heteronormativity or compulsory heterosexuality, gender identity conformity, white racialized discourses and identities, ableistic attitudes, size conformity, and dominant religious values. Now, I'm not going to go into all of this, but in my book I have these charts about the differences between direct and indirect types of bullying. And one of the arguments that I make with teachers is that kids don't even know that they're bullying. So when we start to unpack what bullying actually looks like, it brings them into the mindset to help them understand the ways in which they are actually bullying others. Okay? So I'm going to skip through these here. And I've done the same with cyberbullying as well. All right, now I want to talk for a minute about microaggressions. Now bullying isn't always in the charts that I showed you just before. In fact, there are types of bullying that are more conspicuous. And sometimes bullies actually incur different types of microaggressions and subsequently delegate them when they're hurt. So they act out when they become victims themselves of microaggressions. So what are microaggressions? These are everyday verbal, nonverbal, and environmental slights, snubs, or insults, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostility, derogatory, or negative messages to target people based solely upon their marginalized group membership. And what we have to focus in on is impact is more important than intent, because impact is what is happening within the body, mind, and spirit of the victim itself. And we'll get to that, especially within the film. So, microaggressions. Microaggressions are repetitive and ongoing. They often create discomfort, stress, and trauma. They reflect an active manifestation of oppressive worldviews that create, foster, and enforce marginalization. Microaggressions can occur through imposition or even deprivation. So the absence of something is also microaggression. They can manifest on a continuum from being direct and concrete at somebody to symbolic or psychological, and unintentional, indirect, and subtle. Lots of research around microaggressions, to micro-assaults, micro-invalidations, etc. And the power of them often lie in their invisibility to the perpetrators and oftentimes the recipients. So over time, when someone is incurring microaggressions, they end up exploding, not even realizing they have become victimized by microaggressions or microassaults. Let's skip through the slide. So the messages of microaggressions. So if you are the person that is experiencing microaggressions, this is what's happening on your soul level. I call it soul killing. Okay? They invalidate the group identity or the experiential reality of the target people. It demeans them on personal or group levels, and it communicates that they are lesser beings. It suggests that they don't belong with the majority group, and it threatens and intimidates them. It relegates them to inferior status and treatment. It forces them into a cognitive overload. And then what happens is when you are experiencing this in your day-to-day life, you become almost conditioned to sustain a learned or detached tolerance to buffer yourself against the continuous microaggressions that you might experience throughout the day. You placate others by representing yourself in an incomplete or false way that they believe will be then socially acceptable. And these false fronts and defensive strategies are emotionally and cognitively exhausting and difficult. It can imprint people with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a newer diagnosis in the DSM that is defined actually as bullying that happens over time, and that when you re-experience it, you experience triggers, and those triggers can last a lifetime. And it's similar to what is used to diagnose war veterans and people that have experienced sexual and emotional abuse as well. And this can stay with someone throughout their entire lifetime, as I just mentioned. It puts people then at risk for health-related problems. And it can impact work or athletic concentration, flow, and problem-solving abilities. So, here's what we're going to do now. I'm going to queue up these questions, and then we're going to go into the film, and then we're going to look at what happened, who we think is a victim, Is the system the victim? We'll get into that. So, I'm going to ask you to think about these questions as you watch the film. With which characters do you most empathize? Who or what is the bully? What questions would you want to ask someone about in the film? What most upset or disturbed you? What is the role of adults and teachers in the film? Which character seems most impacted by the incident on the river? Does the film offer redemption, hope, possibilities for restorative justice? And what structural systems are or were operating within the relationships of the characters that contributed to the bullying? Okay? You ready?